What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 547 of Get Paid for Your Pet. We are your hosts, Jasper Rivers and Eric Muller. Eric, what's up, dog?
Sounds like you're losing count of our episodes now. You just got hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes.
547. Yeah, it feels like we just recorded the 500th episodes, and now we're almost at 550. So
yeah, we're catching up to Joe Rogan, you know.
Not quite, but getting there for sure.
Dude, I just I know it's completely off topic, but somebody was asking me, like, what's the main source of content that I absorb? And I read a lot of books. I listen to a lot of audibles. I listen to multiple different podcasts. But then I started realizing, like, I've been listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, I don't know, since early days of Joe Rogan. And I started doing, like, the math on it. And I'm like, holy crap, I think I've listened to, like, over 10,000 hours of Joe Rogan, which is crazy to think about, that I've consumed that much content from one person. So, yeah. Yeah, there's no point of me bringing this up other than to say that that math blew my mind. So, influenced by
well,
Joe
you know
Rogan.
you know what they say. There's a book called The Talent Code, where they try to dissect what talent is and how to be successful at something. And I think one thing they came up with was it takes 10,000 hours of practice to like master a skill to clear and close to perfection. So I guess you're a master Joe Rogan listener now.
That's right. I am a master Joe Rogan listener. But with that said, I have well over 10,000 hours in Airbnb for sure. So let's chat about the B&B bust and all the trauma that's happening in the industry right now with B&B #B&B bust.
All right, so this is so funny. We put together a training on Wednesday, a couple of days ago, right? And we called it B&B Bust is BS, right? We announced this on the podcast. We had a big number of people show up. Actually, it was awesome. We have the recording in our Airbnb Profit Facebook group. So if you want to watch it, you can go in there. But the funny part was, literally the day that we are doing this training, Airbnb comes out with their numbers over the fourth quarter, and we didn't plan it this way. Like I didn't know Airbnb was going to come up with a number.
I did, yeah. I called Brian. I called Brian. I'm like, hey, bro, we got a really big training coming up. Can you please just release your Q4 numbers? So thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's why. So I was wondering, yeah. Did you also tell him to just kind of jack up the numbers a bit?
No, he said that he was going to do something special for us, but yeah, that was cool. But yeah, Q4 numbers, man, they pretty incredible, right? What they came up with.
Yeah, I mean they had a really, really strong fourth quarter, which is kind of funny because the whole B&B bust thing became a thing in the fourth quarter, right? Airbnb had a record number of nights and experiences booked. This was the first year they were profitable as well in 2022. But most importantly, and this is why the Airbnb stock, I don't know if for the guys that are, for the people that are following the stock market at all, like Airbnb stock was up close to 15%. And the biggest reason that it was up so much is because the outlook, investors were expecting Airbnb to come out with a meager outlook for 2023. But Airbnb actually came out with a very strong outlook for the first quarter of this year as well, which kind of surprised investors, I think. And that's why the stock just shot up 15%. And, looking over the last 6 months, I think it's up like 35-40% or so, which is kind of funny that, those two things coincide, like the Airbnb bust talk and then the stock actually get outperforming, record-breaking numbers, very strong outlook. However, I will say, obviously, Airbnb doing well doesn't mean that every host is going to do well as well, right? We definitely recognize that there are some slowdowns visible, or maybe, but also the industry has grown so fast in the last 2 years. Like it's, you can't the trees don't grow into the sky, you know, like at some point it's only natural that there's some slowdowns. Right.
Yeah. I love your Dutch sayings. Yeah, dude. I mean, 100%, man. It's pretty incredible that, you know, the numbers came out the way that they did. Before we even kicked off that training, I had a training session with my physical trainer, Steve, a few hours before we did our BNB-bust is BS training, and he does investing on the side. And that was one of the first things that he said to me. He was like, "Hey man, like the Airbnb stock is doing extremely well today." And I had no idea. I don't really pay attention to the stock market. It's just not my thing. So yeah, it's pretty incredible to see, like, you know, went up 15% just yesterday, or whatever day that was. When was that? Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah, Wednesday.
And then you're saying that the stock as a whole has been up 35% since when?
In the last 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, that just says that what they are doing is, you know, there is no bust. When people say bust, you know, I envision what we went through in 2008, right? And like where it's a true bust. The bubble has burst and everything is collapsing, and your business models are not working, and you have to completely shift what you're doing to survive, right? It goes to survival mode, right? That is not what is happening. Like the data is just not showing it. And like we go into this in that training. So just again, if you guys want to see we did an hour-long training on all of this, just go to facebook.com/groups/Airbnb Profit Club. And we have a recording up there as well. So you guys can see that. And we're going to be doing this weekly too, of like these style trainings in that group. So you guys just join that group and you can just be part of those trainings. That's not what we're seeing at all. Yes, we are seeing that. We're seeing that the market is shifting, and, you know, people's occupancy is being affected, and bookings aren't as high as they were 6 months ago, right? We see that for sure, but that does not indicate a bust, right? And some numbers that we shared on that training was a couple of things that AirDNA released and Transparent Data released as well. Alongside what we saw with Airbnb's Q4 numbers, they booked, by the way, Airbnb, they booked 88.2 million nights booked and experiences in Q4, which is crazy. Like amazing numbers. AirDNA is forecasting a 56.4% occupancy for the industry in 2023, right? So this is actually much higher than where we were at pre-demic. And I'm going to go back to this here in a second, because this is the main factor I want to talk about, is what we experienced the last 2 years during the COVID bubble. Let's just call that the COVID B&B bubble, right? Transparent, out of the property managers that they released a report that out of the property managers that are on their platform that represent over 275,000 short-term rental listings around the world, only 21% of those property managers saw a decrease in bookings, right, from during that report. And then you match it up with Airbnb Q4, and you match it up with how well their stock is doing, you know, today and over the last 6 months. There is zero indication that the industry and the opportunity is at a bust, right? There's no indication of that. But the question becomes, what's actually happening to bookings? Why? And we see it, right? We see it in our Legends X students. We see it in our Rising Star Mastermind members. We see it in the Facebook groups. We just hear people talking about, you know, like to join Legends X, we have a application, and part of it is like, what's the number one challenge you're experiencing? Where do you need the most support, right? From the program and from the coaches. The majority of people are saying that they need help with bookings, right? And I think that's always been there, that they needed help with bookings, but what's actually happening right now? And this is what we went into in the training, that we're not experiencing a B&B bust right now. We're actually seeing the opportunities grow. There's a handful of companies that we featured in that training, global companies that are operating at such a high level, running at 80% plus occupancy, expanding their teams, expanding their units. They're just absolutely crushing it, right? So what are we actually seeing? In my opinion, and I'm curious to hear, because we didn't talk about this too much on the training, but I thought about it again this morning. From my opinion, is what we're seeing is a combination of this Airbnb COVID bubble that we went through for 2 years, where everyone just wanted to get out and get outside of their house and rent a property somewhere, and local travel went through the freaking roof, right? And we noticed that when we were making offers on hotels, looking at historic data, it's like everyone was trying to sell their property and value their property based on COVID numbers. But as we looked at it, it's like, hey, we can't take this in. We got to average out, years prior to COVID, because like it was clearly a bubble where we just saw this spike of travelers staying at these properties, right? So what we're seeing is that bubble starting to relax, right? For many different reasons, but we're getting out of this whole COVID travel bubble that we went through. So all the new hosts that are getting into the platform that experience that, if you got into short-term rentals during COVID, right, and you experience that rise, like anything that's coming down from that, you feel like the thing is collapsing, right? You feel like a challenge is happening. On top of that, there's more hosts than ever on the platform or in short-term rentals as a whole. So there's more inventory, there's more hosts, and we're coming out of a COVID bubble, right? So all of those factors, we're going to see more competition. We're going to see the market leveling out a bit, and that's going to drive less demand through. If you rely on Airbnb 100%, you're going to receive less demand through that platform. And this is what we were talking about yesterday. This is now forcing us to step into creating real hospitality companies. We got to think about marketing. We got to think about guest acquisition. We got to think about guest retention. How do they come back and book with us in the future, right? We got to think about profitability. So there's not a bubble, it's or a bust. It's more of a maturity of the industry that I think we're going through right now. So what are your thoughts on that? Yep. What's your feedback on all that?
Well, a couple things. I think number one is, yes, there's a lot more supply. I was talking to one of our students the other day about the Super Bowl, and I think that's a good example to kind of understand this, right? What happens when the Super Bowl takes place somewhere? Hosts always expect to make a ton of money because they think, whoa, all these people are going to come to my town. My Airbnb listing, I normally charge $300. Now I'm going to charge $1,000, $1,500 a night, and I'm going to make so much cash. And I've seen this year over year that the results are always quite disappointing. And the reason is that there's a lot of people that are not renting out their places normally, who know of the opportunity and who put their home on Airbnb just for that time period, right? Just for the weekend, right? Or maybe for like a couple of weeks around that time. So what happens is a massive amount of supply hits the market, and then, like some hosts, some regular Airbnb hosts, they actually don't get booked at higher prices, or some of their listings don't get booked at all, because there's just so much supply in the market that weekend, right? So that's happened to our student, who was like, nah, not all my properties booked out, and it wasn't at like super high prices. And I've seen this before, around these type of events. So the way I think about it is, that's kind of like what happened with this COVID bubble, as you call it, too, where the ADRs went up so much that there's a lot of opportunistic people coming into the market who are just attracted to that. But once the rates go down a bit, once it cools off, those people are also gonna leave. That's my expectation, that a lot of that supply is going to disappear, because well, first of all, like, you know, when the rates go down a bit, demand goes down. I think those are the people, you know, those people who came in, those are the people that are going to be hurt the most, because they're not really focused on delivering a world-class experience. They're not really focused on like educating themselves or building a brand, all the stuff that we've been talking about. They're just focused on like, hey, I can rent out my house for $300 a night. That's crazy. Let's do it. Right. And it's going well for a while and they're happy. But then as soon as there's a little dip, you know, they don't get so many bookings anymore. And then they'll figure out the different solution for the property. That's what I'm expecting. So that's always going to be the case. Right.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, this stuff just reminds me of like whenever there's a new opportunity, the excitement of the everyday person jumping on the opportunity, like you have this like almost inflation that comes from the early stage opportunities, right? You saw it with crypto, the amount of people that just entered into crypto and they were making money in the early stages. And then the moment that it starts shifting, and I don't want to get into conversations about crypto because I'm not educated on that and I'm staying away from that as much as possible. But once you know, I have friends that are making millions of dollars in the crypto industry, right? And it's what they're focused on. They're focused on building real businesses and real investments, and they understand the industry. They understand how it works. They understand the supply and demand. They understand the whole thing, right? But I also have lots of friends that got in at the early stages and they were making money. And then the moment that it got complicated, the moment that it became difficult, the moment that you had to become a sophisticated investor, they exit and they lose all their money, right? Because they were expecting it to just be easy the whole time, right? And that's what I think we're experiencing. We're experiencing a maturity of the industry from going from, and I shared this on the training yesterday, is that when I first entered into Airbnb, like, dude, I got one property, a small 2-bedroom in La Mesa, California, which is not a tourist area at all. It's 30 minutes from the beach. It's inland and it's like a beautiful little town. I love the town, but it's not a destination spot. And I started generating like $3,000 a month, anywhere between $1,500 and $3,000 a month in profit on this property. Blew my freaking mind. So I went out and just started renting up everything, right? It was so easy. And the idea was like, oh, let me just list this, automate it, and I don't have to be a part of it. The tools communicate with the guests, sends the, you know, like I don't have to be part of this thing. I only step in when there's a red flag, a fire to deal with, right? That culture of growing Airbnb businesses do not exist anymore. And people still are teaching this. People are still preaching that you can list it and forget it and have this incredible experience. It's just not going to happen. We're in the hospitality industry. Part of the thing that I was talking about too is that's bringing a lot of the challenge to the industry right now. And to me, this is a blessing, but there's also, you know, a challenge that comes with this is that the guest is more educated nowadays. The traveler is more educated, right? We went through years of experiencing Airbnb and experiencing terrible hosts and experiencing incredible hosts, right? And the everyday traveler that is booking Airbnbs, they have certain standards on what they want and what they expect, right? In their stays. And if you're not meeting that, your properties are going to reflect your effort that you're putting into the listing and the hospitality experience, right?
Yep.
And it's, look, man, we're in I say it all the time, we're in a hospitality business first, real estate business second. And, you know, until we can shift that mindset, then we can really start expanding this. So, you know, I talk to a lot of our legend, you know, members that are part of the Rising Star Mastermind. I speak to a lot of our mentors and just like individuals that are doing incredible things in this space. And they're like, yeah, you know, certain properties were being affected, but as a whole, we're still growing, we're still investing, we're still expanding. I don't know anybody in this space who is a professional host, a legend, that is shrinking right now or is being affected by a B&B bust, air quote. So it's just driving towards professionalism, man. And it's like, just like what we were saying yesterday, it has to, to save this and to save your business and to expand and be the person who that capitalizes on challenges in the market. You got to focus on brand. You got to focus on developing a real hospitality brand. If you have one listing or 100 listings, doesn't matter. You got to focus on the brand experience of your short-term rental.
Yeah. Yeah, we shared some examples of companies that we're following for as we're building out our own company. Freewild, Getaway is one, AutoCamp, AvantStay, and you mentioned these companies. They're not really affected by the slowdown. Like Getaway sees like a really high occupancy, right? And you actually stayed at a Getaway.
Yeah.
Was it last weekend?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah. How was that experience?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. What I was sharing in the training is like, because we're raising for Freewild and, we're going to be talking to investors and pitching the business and the whole thing, we got to do market research, right? And what I've recognized is like part of our ideal air quote competitors. One of them is Getaway, AutoCamp, AvantStay, like. The reason why I brought them up is because they have a unique brand. They serve a unique style traveler. They have a unique asset, and they have a world-class hospitality. That's the one thing that connects all of them, is just world-class hospitality. So, Getaway, I wanted to go and experience what they have to offer. How was my stay at Getaway? And by the way, I don't know behind the scenes, obviously, what's happening at that company, but everything I've read and all the podcasts I've listened to, or, the interviews of the founder and just understanding that company, they're in pure expansion mode right now. They have this thing where they want to do 2,500 units, cabins by 2025. So they're expanding like crazy. They've raised a ton of money. And they've opened up during COVID. They opened up multiple different locations around the country. So there's nothing obviously on the outside that indicates that they're shrinking at all. It's the opposite of that. But yeah, as far as the guest experience, dude, I was underwhelmed with it. I mean, I don't know if I'm their ideal guest avatar, to tell you the truth. It's like and I wish it, maybe one day I can sit down with the founder and talk to him about the brand and like ask these specific questions. But Getaway is awesome. Like their branding, their website, the experience is really cool once you book, and they, that whole experience is really cool. We spent a lot of money, dude. Like their cash flow. I want to get into their cash flow. I want to understand what they're making, because we pay top dollar for this cabin. And for people who don't know, Getaway is a direct to consumer brand, right? So they're not on Airbnb or any other OTAs. You have to go to their website to book their property. And that's a major gamble for them to develop that style brand. But the way that they do it is creating this like awesome experience, and they invest a lot into influencer marketing and guest marketing, as far as like having their guests take photos of their experience and remarket that. So they're doing great. Their Instagram alone has 1 million followers, right? So their model is working. But when I got there, I was kind of blown away. We stayed at Big Bear, and their location is like 30 to 45 minutes outside of Big Bear. Maybe it's 30 minutes outside of Big Bear, but they market it as Big Bear, right? It's in a residential area. You pull up to it, there's zero signage that shows that it's Getaway. So the experience for me, I'm like, this is weird. I don't know if I'm at someone's house. I don't know what this is. Everything is minimal. Their thing is called, they have this one saying, everything that you need, nothing that you don't, something like that. They are by far minimalist, essentialism 100% with their stays, right? It's like there's this 200 square foot cabin that has a bathroom, very tiny bathroom, a little chair, a tiny little kitchenette, and a bed. That's it. They have no Wi-Fi. They have no TV. the idea there is to help you, and it's kind of what we're doing with free wild, right? It's helping you disconnect from it all and be in the present moment, right? That's the experiences that they're creating. And they're doing a great job at it. But as a operator, I'm looking at it, I'm like, holy crap, man, like these guys are just like, they are creating the most essential experience. They are saving on every single dollar. Like they're not investing in anything outside of the cabin in the woods, right? Like there's zero art on the walls. There's nothing in that property that they invested into for the experience other than being in that cabin that's in the woods. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool, man. Like I didn't know that there was no Wi-Fi, there was no TV. I didn't really look into that. But when we got there, we're like, oh crap, okay, well, what are we going to do now, right? And what we found is that we're reading more, we're writing more. It was snowing, so we couldn't go out, but we're in bed by like 8:30, 9 o'clock, because after a while it kind of gets boring and you want to go to sleep. There's nothing to do. They also upsell everything, man. Like there's nothing there that's for sale. There's nothing there that they give you. Like coffee, you got to pay for it, right? S'mores, you got to pay for it. Like whatever it is, you got to pay for it, right? So they have those income streams, but this is not a knock on them at all. I'm impressed with their business model, but as a consumer, I don't know if I was their ideal guest avatar. I think, by the second day I was ready to go home, and, I don't really have a desire to go back to their properties as a guest. But as a business model, I'm super impressed with what they built. They've raised over $48 million, I think, in 5 different fundraisers. And they're expanding like crazy. So, yeah, the next one that we're going to stay at is Auto Camp, which I'm excited about. I've stayed at a handful of Avant stays, and I'm always impressed with those guys, what they do. So, yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. Maybe we could get the founder of Getaway on here. It'd be fun to chat with him about the model and the whole thing. But yeah, we're using for the listeners, go check out the training that we did in the Airbnb Profit Club on Facebook. Because we go into why we study those companies and what makes them unique and what's kind of driving their success, and how we're using that to essentially build how we're learning. Like Tony Robbins talks about, success leaves clues, right? So how we're learning from their success to customize something unique for our company.
Yeah. Well, for me, just listening to this, and I looked at the website and the pricing and everything, and to me, the biggest takeaway from this is the power of the brand, right? Like, because they can charge so much money. I looked and it was like, for weekends, it's like $400 or $500 a night.
Dude, it was unbelievable. I couldn't freaking believe it. This is why I was saying I was so impressed with what they were doing, because yeah, I mean, we spent, I think it was like $550 for the weekend per night. And that's high class, man. And all of their cabins, they had like, I think 50 units, 50 cabins in their Big Bear location, give or take. Their occupancy was through the roof. There was people going in and out of these units all the time. And like, I read something that, and I don't know if this is still current or not, but they were on Shark Tank back in the day. They pitched this model back in the day. But they talk about how they can build a unit for $30,000 and get their investors' money back on a whole location within 18 months. And I'm like, how is that possible? I don't get it. But once I was there, I was like, oh, these guys are like, they're not investing in anything. It's pure essentialism in the woods, and they're able to drive this through their brand 100%, right? They do nothing differently than anybody else that's hosting on Airbnb. They just simplify the freaking process, man. And they keep 100% of it. They have 100% in-house. It's all brand for them.
Yeah, I mean, they do less than most Airbnb hosts. I mean, you don't even have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, dude. Like, and it's part of the process, right? It's part of like their brand. Not to have Wi-Fi, not to have a TV, but the way I look at it as an operator, it's like this is them choosing to create a brand that doesn't invest that doesn't have to invest into that cost, but they tie it into their brand. And because they're customizing these experiences and they're making an Instagrammable experience with a big window and the black cabin in the woods, if you go on their Instagram, all their photos that their guests are sharing are exactly the same. It's either someone's laying in the bed looking out the window, someone's sitting on the couch or sitting at the table writing, or they're sitting outside on the steps or at the fireplace, right? Like that's all it is over and over again. But they do it extremely well. Yeah, I'm just super impressed. I'm super impressed with them. So,
yeah, because I'm thinking like, let's say some random person buys the same type of cabin and puts it like 1 mile away in the same woods, same experience. They'd probably be able to charge $100 a night.
Yeah, who knows, man? Like I think it comes down. I mean, it comes down to what we were talking about in the training, what this whole podcast is about, right? Of like, if you can develop unique brands, if you can have unique assets, develop unique brands, focus on the experience of the guest. The experience for Getaway is it's 100% essentialism for them, right? You can create that demand. I talked about this on the training. It's like creating voices and eyeballs around your brand. If you can do that, you can drive demand, right? If you have demand, then you can increase your prices. And, apparently it's working for them. So, yeah.
Yeah. But what's interesting too, is like, we've been going through their business model and everything, like, cause there's a lot of documents that you found on Crunchbase, right? And Crunchbase is basically a platform where you can get information about about different startups and companies. You can see who invested, how much they raised, all sorts of documents that are on there. And it's interesting to read all those documents because you realize like how much time and effort they put into the vision. What we always talk about in Legends X, like you got to create a vision first. And if you see how much effort they put into that, of really getting so clear on the guest avatar and so clear on their assets, so clear on their identity, so clear on the experience. And that's the result of that is they now have that pricing power of charging like $400 or $500 for something that, a random person might only be able to charge like $100, $150 a night. So yeah, it just clearly shows that value there.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty incredible, man. That's why we always start with the vision plan in Legends X. So, yeah, I mean, and with that said, anyone who's interested in learning more about this, we keep talking about it, but, head over to the Airbnb Profit Club Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Airbnb Profit Club. You'll see that training that's up there. But if you guys also need that help with the vision side, this is something that we are very passionate about, and we're putting a lot of effort into this, obviously, with FreeWild. That's we spent all of our time building the vision, building the brand, building the operations behind this. If you guys really need support with that, reach out to us for Legends X. We're more than happy to help you guys on growing this. And that's where I think we bring the most value to this space, is understanding how to build real hospitality companies that are scalable and that could be either that are driving profit, that could either be sold or be a generational company that, continues to scale throughout the years. So we're not about the whole get rich quick thing. We're not about, just building something for cash flow now that you never have to put your hands on. Like that stuff, like that's all BS. Like I don't know anyone who does that. Everybody I know that's in this industry that drives real profits consistently are very involved in their companies, and they have very clear processes on how to do that. So if that's striking a chord with you guys, definitely recommend you guys reach out to us from there. So overnightsuccess.io/X.
That's right. We're kicking off another class on Monday, actually. So it's going to be exciting. And also, we mentioned this before, but we're going to be doing these trainings every single Wednesday at 1 p.m. PST. If you're on our email list, if you're not, you can go sign up at overnightsuccess.io. We send out updates on what the topics are about, how you can join. Very simple. We have the same link that we use every single time. You can sign up at overnightsuccess.io/training. That's where you can sign up for our weekly trainings. And we'd love to hear from everybody who's listening on this podcast. Like, the reason why we're doing these trainings is because we just recognize within our Legends X program, we had over 300 students now go through the program. We just recognize there's so much value in there, and we want to share that more with our broader community. So that's why we decided to put on these trainings every single Wednesday. And we'd love to hear from everybody who's listening. I know there's a lot of people that have been listening for a very long time. There's also a lot of people that started listening recently who might not know us that well, but we'd love to hear from you. If you have any, what are your challenges right now? Like, what do you want to be educated on? Like, what do you want to learn right now? What are your biggest challenges, right? Just email us at team@overnightsuccess.io.
That's right. Do all those things that we just told you to do. Do every single one of them.
They always say, like, only give people one thing to do, because otherwise they get confused. So we just give them like 5 things.
Yeah, I don't believe in that. I believe we do all the things all at once. I'm just playing. We don't believe in that. All right, y'all. Well, let's wrap it up with that, man. There's no, I'll leave it with this. B&B Bust is BS. It's a good way for marketers to sell your products and, all those things. Grab your eyeballs. But also, this is for the people that are experiencing any type of challenges with their businesses. It's just, it's showing us that we have to mature a bit more. We have to invest into the right things in our company. We have to invest in developing a brand. We have to invest in developing systems. We have to invest into doing marketing, creating marketing plans, the whole thing. And we're here to support. We're here to support you guys. So with that said, don't believe the BS, and keep grinding, keep growing, keep focused, because we're not going anywhere. That's what we're doing.
That's right. That's right. And since you like my expressions and sayings so much, I'll close it out with one of my favorite sayings: "Smooth waters don't make great sailors."
That's right. Boom.
So,
look at that.
Keep that in mind. If you're seeing a little slowdown, if your bookings are down a little bit, just keep that in mind. This is going to push you, going to make you go outside of the box and develop marketing strategies that in the long term are going to benefit you. So keep that in mind. With that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great weekend. Again, Wednesday, 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. EST. Join us on our next training. We'll send out emails. Join the Profit Club, where we'll keep you posted as well. And, of course, Monday we'll be back with another podcast episode.
Adios.
Peace.